everybody. Just a little bit of a show of hands of who is here. Who has heard my presentation before? Okay, all right, one, yeah, great. And who is a quantum company? Okay, about half, yeah, there you go. I see IBM, Paul in the audience, that makes sense. Who is an ecosystem? Okay, fun, okay, about the other half, easy. So we'll keep this fast, and given the scale, we'll have the opportunity to chat just after as well. The key things I really want to draw out here is, obviously we're here for a reason. Quantum is the most important technology of the 21st century. A place and strategy matters to driving that progress in industry. And the really critical thing that I take, and my background is science entrepreneurship, so it's starting companies with university research. And before that, I was in the UK for quite a while. And there, I always look to a biotech model. And the reality about biotech is the US is typically the market. And for quantum, that's disproportionately going to be US DoD. But actually, to realize that success at scale, you have to thoughtfully partner with aligned countries from all around the world and have a model that works for everybody involved. And we're really trying to bring that to the fore with Elevate Quantum here, which we were honored to ultimately be selected as the first and only major place-based investment that the US government has made in the quantum industry. In the process, and again, every major quantum ecosystem competed for this because the part of the program here, it's up to $1 billion in funding. Just from one program alone into each of these hubs. It's not spray and pray, it's choose the best and then double, triple, quadruple down. That program alone activated $130 million in initial Series A funding. It activated about $1 billion in private capital. Again, this is net new going forward. And ultimately, with the lens of securing US quantum leadership with a place-based strategy. It's kind of learning from the errors that the US government made in the semiconductor area. And ultimately, the reason why we were selected is because the Mountain West, for reasons that we'll get into, for a funny reality, is by every measure the leading ecosystem in the US. If you just look at Nobel Prizes, the Mountain West has won 4 Nobel Prizes in just the last 30 years alone. It's 8 historically. Those actually all came from one institution, JILA. And again, that's just from 2000. When you look at the historic leadership of New Mexico, Los Alamos, Sandia, the labs there, you have something that stretches back about eight decades. And given that leadership, it leads on things like the Quantum Benchmarking Initiative as well. Because of that historic leadership and the type of innovation that they have, and I'll get to the type of innovation because there's an intellectual piece about this as well that I, at least personally, with my background, find important. There are more organizations doing quantum in our region than any other. That's more than California, that's more than New York, and again, that's in absolute terms. That's not a per capita figure. And then last, that equates to more jobs. There are 3,000 people in the quantum ecosystem in Colorado alone. That's not the ecosystem, that's just industry. I'm not counting the national labs, I'm not counting the research universities, I'm not counting New Mexico. 3,000 people. To give a sense of scale, again, that is more than California, that's more than New York. It's a little bit, it's not an accident of history. A lot of this comes because this was an industry-led ecosystem, a kind of commercial-led ecosystem from the beginning. And so when you compare that against DOE-led ecosystems, if you look to New Mexico, which is again in our region, or Chicago, they're typically fewer than 100 people at scale today. And so we're talking about 30 odd times what a New Mexico-based ecosystem is. Now, we hope, like all ecosystems in the US, it can really scale to meet its potential. And also, these companies are able and already have raised over $1 billion in private capital. That's drawn down and committed. And so the opportunities, the activities that I'm talking about going forward are on top of the largest infrastructure, the largest investment, the largest job base in the country by orders of magnitude. And that ecosystem is not just big in absolute terms in one particular area, it's big not by mistake. And this is kind of my personal learning from science commercialization that I spent a lot of time on this, and it's a reconstitution of a John Burke slide of what are the quantum technologies that are important and when are they hitting the market. And we added one dimension, which is approximated by fundraise and patents and other features, which is what's the role of the Mountain West? in this. And the interesting thing about this is the Mountain West is good not just at one piece of this technology stack. It's good at the entire stack of quantum technologies, with the exception of algorithms, where there are a number of other ecosystems. Chicago is really an incredible place to do algorithms applications development. And there, what happened was historic leadership in enabling hardware, lasers, cryogenics. The commercialization of that and the process of commercializing those capabilities led to unfair advantages at the next layer down of quantum sensing. That's where you won a bunch of Nobel Prizes. Then those constituent parts ended up being the individual ingredients into quantum computers, which led to the largest cluster of quantum companies that are kind of indigenously there in the US. And it makes it a virtuous circle. And again, it's really important to focus on that, at least from my perspective, because when you look at the leading ecosystems in the world in semiconductors, Taiwan, Korea, Belgium with next door in the Netherlands for ASML, they follow the economic development or the advanced technology development laws of gravity. You can't skip steps. You have to focus on those technologies that are commercializing first, use those proceeds to plow into the next generation. You can't cheat. And so we're trying to take that ethos, a startup ethos, an industry-led ethos, and say, given the scale of these opportunities, how do you reconstitute that at ultimately the scale and size of the potential that we see in quantum, which we're here for what we see as the most important technology of the next 50 years for that. But at the same time, while we're looking ahead, I sleep at night occasionally, really worried about this problem, which is you can invent the future, you can bring that along a certain technology journey. That doesn't guarantee you get to keep it in your four walls. And as we saw with the work with the Chicago Quantum Exchange and the Chicago ecosystem, I'm not worried about this kind of good news story, which is that technology package stayed in the US. I'm worried about the geostrategic competition ultimately with the People's Republic of China, and losing that race in something that is profoundly higher stakes, both from a national and economic security perspective. And so that's what Elevate Quantum has done, kind of rising to this mission and focusing on being industry-led. It's a fundamental difference when you're industry-led and you start with where are there industry problems to scale and recreate the next Microsoft, the next AWS, the next Google of tomorrow, and you really focus on the key ingredient of industry, which is the pace of innovation. It's the pace of innovation. How do you go from an idea to a widget to a sale faster than anywhere else? Because those are the ecosystems that are going to dominate. I don't need the fluff and the faff and the media. I need to go from an idea to $1 billion company like that. And we gear all of our resources to precisely that. And that's because we live and breathe startup. And it's attracted an incredible group of people, 120 organizations. 90% of these are local. They're quantum household names, Quantinuum, Atom, Inflection. We have 50% of the US critical supply chain for lasers. We have 100% of the dilution refrigerator supply chain. We have the largest cluster of quantum sensing, largest commercial deployment of quantum sensors anywhere in the world with long path technologies. We have all of the R1 universities across the region. We have all of the national labs, NREL, NIST, Sandia, LANL, University of New Mexico with the incredible theoretical work. And then, of course, we have all the economic development organizations that support alongside. But again, the heft of the largest cluster in the US, we think it should be the largest cluster in the world. But again, I don't have as good data around that, has attracted every major tech company in the US with a quantum program. So Microsoft sits on our board, AWS, NVIDIA, Google, Lockheed Martin has the center of their quantum operations there. It's a scale which we're fortunate can kind of bridge that stack. But again, there's a lot more to do in this industry, and we need help as a country, we need help as an ecosystem, we need help as an allied set of partners. And I always go back to, what's the model for it? I want to reconstitute what we saw in the space race, but I want to learn the one mistake, which is, you can land on the moon. That can seed a certain technology advantage for a certain period of time, but actually, unless you invest in certain capacity building activities, you don't maintain your edge. And so what we're trying to do is not just get the moon landing with some similar programs aligned with QBI and other work, but we're also trying to invest in those capabilities that have that learning loop go 10 times faster. And it's really tangible stuff. right? If I look to history, you have to, again, it's that iteration loop across the quantum value chain from effectively raw materials all the way to end user applications. And how do you focus on those nodes in between them so that you can realize going from an idea to a widget to a scaled billion-dollar company? Some of those pieces are going really well and some of them are not. Right? We were talking to a room full of generals a couple weeks back, talking about this slide, and I find the PIC fabrication really interesting. Right? This is a critical component for a lot of the AMO approaches in quantum computing for folks that wouldn't be familiar. So in our ecosystem, some of the biggest players, to go from an idea to a widget, it can be 9 to 12 months, sometimes more. If they were located in other ecosystems across the world, they would go from an idea to a widget literally in a couple of weeks. You can have the best ideas on the planet, you can have the most money on the planet, but unless you focus on those capabilities around rapid turnaround, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. And so what we wanna realize is those sorts of gaps that for reasons of typically economic development structure, you cannot solve as a private company or cannot solve as effectively as a private company, and we have ruthless investment in those. It's the highest leverage activity. It's not about scale of cash, though again, we'd fine on scale of cash. It's about what you're doing with it, and it has to be industry-led. The model for this is IMEC, which is a Belgian public-private partnership formed in 1984. It focused on rapid prototyping, low-volume manufacture in semiconductors, industry-led, next to its brother cousin that was started in the same year, ASML, I presume a company that we at least interface with the outputs of their technology. And they focus on those critical bottlenecks that only a public-private partnership could, that are very expensive and not a good fit for research universities, not a good fit for national labs, not a good fit for commercial because they're too early for that. They charge money for those, so they didn't have to get VC return because they're a non-for-profit, and they plow that back into those activities so they could scale with the industry. Today, IMEC earns over $1 billion a year in revenue, actually a little bit about $1 billion. Every serious semiconductor player on the planet works and interfaces with them. You don't scale as a company unless you're a thoughtful partnership with IMEC. And last but not least, by most approximations, because ASML was spun out, largest technology company on the planet, or in close partnership, not spun out, you see a realization that IMEC is probably the most geostrategically important company, public-private partnership, I should say, on the planet. And so we reconstitute exactly that model. And we're fortunate that we were building off an incredible ecosystem that has already raised over $1 billion. We activated $130 million of direct ecosystem assets focused on these critical bottlenecks, not the nice to haves, right? The stuff that's gonna make you go from that idea, and then we focus on a couple of assets. There's shared use equipment to enable cryogenics and AMO, the solid state piece of things, so you can hit the ground running and save yourselves millions, tens of millions of dollars on the sort of capital equipment in order to scale your quantum company. We focus on a PIC fab, again, photonic integrated circuit. Hopefully soon we'll look at certain opportunities for superconducting fab capabilities, a range of accelerate capabilities. This is a set of entrepreneurial support. The biggest observation there, the reality is, and I lived this as an entrepreneur, when you're starting companies in deep physics, there are two big customers. It's life science and it's defense. It's what comes down to it. Life science is hard in quantum for a number of reasons, and so in dollars spent, it's gonna be 80–90% defense. And so my lived reality of what I need to do to get these companies successful, how do we get them defense contracts? Which is fortunate because Colorado is the only state other than Florida with 2 combatant commands. It doesn't get more senior in the US defense architecture of folks that make decision purchases for defense, billion, trillion-dollar decisions. And then the folks that think about the intel community, they work over in Sandia and Los Alamos. And again, a lot of those decision makers, like as what you saw as the close engagement with QBI, we have entree into those environments as well. And we need to be thoughtful with foreign partners, of course, but we have to leverage that because that's how these startups are going to live or die. It's gonna be, they get their idea, they make their idea, and they sell that for a whole lot of money. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. And last but not least, we think a lot about workforce development. There's a famous stat of for every 3 open quantum jobs, there's only 1 qualified person. With 3,000 people in the industry cluster today alone, we have, it's a great advantage, but we also have to think about workforce and doing that at real scale. And so we're trying to reconstitute that now. And very excitingly, seeing the potential for this. The Colorado School of Mines really stuck their necks out. But this was pulled together in collaboration with all of the R1 universities across the region to open up the Quantum Commons at Arvada. The aim, again, here is simple. We are today, again, it's larger in absolute terms than Silicon Valley in California. This is the Silicon Valley of quantum, but quantum isn't the scale of Silicon Valley. And so the goal here is the Stanford Research Park and to reconstitute the magic that they had, which was industry-led, closely tied, and with impact at real scale. It's 70 acres. A lot of that is brownfield, and so we're fortunate to be able to have the Colorado School of Mines give us those facilities for free forever, and so we can pass that on to the companies that are locating on the site, the advantages of that, and if they need not much lab space or not much fab space, then we're fortunate able to provide the shared use equipment, cryogenics, optics tables, some of the dill fridges affiliated with that at dramatically lower prices because we can have that shared use facilities provided by ultimately with government support. Last but not least, any companies that actually want to build, fortunately, they can locate on this site and get the ground lease for free forever, right? You're not going to get there unless with Colorado companies alone. This has to be a destination for anybody who wants to achieve real scale on the planet that's a good fit for this ecosystem. And with that as well, it's nice, it's not just the baseline of you get the dirt for free, that's nice, but you also get economic development incentives on top of that that are strong and competitively benchmarked by the state of Colorado. And that's the question. I'm happy to chat. This is gonna, we've announced this publicly. This is gonna open, at least for the admin building, which opens up a lot of office space. And if you're doing AMO, the kind of photonics focused work, that'll come online in March. And then the rest of the site will come online later this year. 70 acres is a whole lot of land. We'll have a lot of room to grow on that site. And so we continue to welcome anyone with an interest to do that. And we're just getting started. So Tech Hubs, the good news about that program, which again, we were fortunate to be the first and only selection for quantum. We hope that there are more. The US government should be making deeper investments in this. It activated that $130 million. The idea is to pick those winners and double down. And so it's looking like another $500 million, which is coming down the pike for the Tech Hubs program. So we'll have another bite at the apple for that with the NDAA. There are a range of other potential support. The NSF engines, which it's $160 million from the NSF, they require a 2-to-1 match. And the state of New Mexico, which is leading that effort, perfect, I have 2 minutes left. The state of New Mexico, which is leading that effort, is one of the world's great research ecosystems that's not right-sized with the scale of industry in the state. And we think we have a historic chance to do that. The fortunate thing about the state of New Mexico, apart from this amazing research ecosystem, apart from this amazing potential, is they have a $57 billion, that's a billion with a B, we were shocked by that, because of the oil and gas industry, where we have a historic opportunity to have that big beast really direct an incredible amount of resources that matched with the national labs to cement New Mexico's role in the quantum future, not just as a research center, but also as the center as it should be for quantum industry, where jobs scale into the tens of thousands. Obviously, there's work in quantum benchmarking and range as well beyond. And so hopefully just getting started alongside some other great coworkers and collaborators at other hubs across the country. So as we get back to it, we're here because we believe quantum is important. The strategy matters. Like how, money is one thing, right? We've raised much money. I've also, as much money as we've also made, mistakes. You take those learnings, and with that entrepreneurial lens, you have to invest in the right activities, the right assets. It makes all of the difference. And doing that and learning from models like biotech, I think we can make this the time to reconstitute what we had seen in semiconductors to bring about a new area where, with quantum technology, from sensing to enabling hardware to compute, we really can realize what I think and feel and truly believe would be a next Jetsons age. So if you're interested, please help join that mission, and I welcome any questions or feedback from this audience.